Good morning, guys, my friends. Welcome to today's random bits video from me. If you're new to me, I'm Marshall Burtcher, and I help codependents rediscover happiness by healing their trauma bond, discovering who they are, and creating happy relationships. So I tend to cover the big bases there because that's what we actually need to heal. So before we get started, I need to share this out to the community real quick. The community is your safe haven here on the internet, where you can find shelter, understanding, guidance, tools, and support in liberating yourself from the clutches of shame, abuse, narcissistic abuse, loneliness, codependency. And that's what we focus on. And so that link is above on Facebook, below on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for helping me out there with that. Let me click some buttons, share to a group. And, oh, it's alive. I've clicked it. Okay. Let me know how you're doing in the comments below. Let's just have a little discussion here on the nuance versus all or nothing or black and white thinking. And where this comes from, what we do, because it's just some random things that have come up for me. Well, let's jump in. So, codependency is typically a result of a trauma state that I call a freeze-fawn loop. So the brain has four options when it encounters a threat. Option number 1 is to fight it, kill it. Option number 2 is to flee it. Option number 3 is to freeze, wait for it to pass, play dead, and then run. And option number 4 is fawn. Fawning is where we realize we can't escape the threat. We realize we might even have a dependency on the threat for our survival, and so we attempt to please it, to become pleasing or appealing to it, so it'll keep us alive and keep us around. Children of abusive parents will be in a freeze-fawn loop, because they'll freeze with the attack and then they'll fawn in order to keep the parent close. Victims of domestic violence will be in a freeze-fawn loop because they are dependent on, they have a psychological, maybe even an emotional dependency on the abuser. So they'll freeze when they attack and then fawn in order to bring them back. The other side of this cycle is called the SAD cycle. It stands for seduction, abuse, discard. This is something very specific to narcissistic individuals, not necessarily narcissists themselves, but people that exhibit narcissistic traits such as grandiosity, lack of empathy, a sense of entitlement and specialness, where they deserve what they want and they'll take it anyway. These people tend to seduce their targets. Then once the seduction's complete and the target has bought into the love bombing narrative, this facade that the narcissistic person's created for them, the narcissistic person will start to abuse them and then eventually discard them, throwing them away and replacing them with some other supply. That's what we focus on largely here in my work. It's codependency that results from that cycle. And in this brain state of freeze-fawning, we tend to lose nuance. We may have never even learned nuance. I didn't learn nuance because everything in my world was quite black and white. I was raised in an environment that saw the world as evil, and that there was good in the world, but good was very stark. Evil was very stark. There's no gray space between. You're either good or you're evil. You're on my side or you're an enemy. You're either right or you're wrong. These kind of things. You're either worthy or unworthy. It's a very dangerous form of thinking. And it's the product of it is from the lack of being nuanced into the world. Okay, so we can be raised into black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking. We can be conditioned into it through trauma. The brain may be in that freeze-fawn loop, so it can't process things in a wider scale because it's more oriented towards survival rather than discovery and understanding. And this tends to trap us. This tends to harm us. It helped us survive in the toxic dynamic because we needed to be able to gauge whether something was harmful or not, and then work towards what was not harmful to reduce the threat that we were experiencing. When we get outside of that dynamic, though, we enter a world that has a lot of nuance. Because the majority of our experiences with people are going to be mixed. We're going to encounter people who have strong, healthy components and then things that they need to work on. That's nuance. That's the gray space between this black and white polarization. It is the world of understanding the humanity that's around us. Because even within us, we're not black and white. We're not all good. We're not all bad. We're not all wrong or right. But if we treat ourselves with those polarities, we're going to end up with very severe swings in our sense of worth. We're going to be very worthy or very unworthy. We're not going to have a real sense of our intrinsic innocence and value, because it's going to be polarized by what other people do and what results we get. Instead, when we move to nuance and we shed this idea that black and white is how we need to read the world, then we can start to understand the dynamics of what healthiness looks like. Because one of the key indicators to someone's level of, say, emotional or mental health, or I would say relational health would probably be a better term there. Their level of relational health is the patterns of behavior they exhibit. Patterns of behavior. Patterns. This is where the nuance comes in. Because we all screw up. We all mess it up. Sometimes we do toxic things. I certainly have. I imagine everyone has done it at least once in their world. A one-time thing is not a pattern and not a measure of where we need to really judge something. What we need to do is when something or someone does that, we need to see what they do with it. The correction, the repair, the accountability, the ownership of it is what matters. Because if they take ownership of it, they're accountable to it, and then they make a repair and you get a different result next time, and you can see them changing and growing and their awareness expanding, you're going to have a different pattern in your world, and you actually have met somebody who can do their own work. That's someone that you can build safety with if that's something you choose to do. Now, there is some limits on this concept. Like, I'm not going to have relationships with people who've abused children, for instance, or have murdered. I'm not going to have relationships with people who have specific kinds of perspectives on race or religion or things like that promote the harm of other human beings. Those are not things I tolerate. Personally, they are my deal breakers. Also, one that's quite firm on any kind of abuse being a deal breaker. Abuse is the active violation of another person's body, their violation of their consent, violation of their boundaries in a way that harms them. Because we're all going to step on each other's toes. This is just reality. It's what we do when someone says, ouch, that matters. Do we make an attempt to repair? Do we own it? Do we change our behavior? Are we willing to look at, hey, what's a better way of doing this? Because a lot of times in our behaviors, we're doing what we know. And sometimes that doesn't work for someone, and sometimes that same thing would work differently for someone else. But in this context of relationship, context of nuance, it's about understanding, well, doing this doesn't work for this person, so I can apply a different skill here. That's consideration. That's a positive regard for their well-being and for yours. It's not a mark against you, and it's not a selfishness on their part to request that you'll show up a little differently if someone requests that. You can always evaluate it and see if that makes sense to you. There is definitely nuance. And that's kind of the trick here. With nuance, there's context. You gotta understand the context of the person, their history, context of their present experience, and then the context of your present and your history, and then work towards understanding. The more we understand each other, really understanding what we are looking to feel and to experience and have, the safer our relationships become. The more empowered we become to understand difference, to build bridges between differences, and to work towards an empathetic cooperation, or at least a respectful one at minimum. This is what nuance is about. It's being willing to look at a spectrum and understand what works for you and doesn't, and then work towards those things that work for you and don't. It's also about understanding that within, like, community, for instance, like in my community, people step on each other's toes fairly frequently. Sometimes it's because the individuals haven't read the rules and understood them. Sometimes it's just because they're at a certain level in their own lives. Sometimes it's because, something happened. There was a confusion or a misunderstanding. That's normal in a community. That's expected. It's not ever going to be prevented. There is no fundamental way to prevent that from happening. So the way I manage it is I watch how people correct their behaviors. I watch how they respond. I watch how those who are affected take care of their own boundary. Because you always have the right to either gray rock a person. Digitally, you can, like in the real world, you don't have to interact with someone who's stepping on your toes all the time, or has made blatant, assumptions about you that they didn't have the context for. You don't have to play with people you don't want to play with. So you can gray rock them, you can distance yourself from them, or not actively engage with them. On digital communities, you can block them. That allows you to have a community that works for you, because not the whole community is not toxic. Unless the leadership is supporting such things, unless there is an enormous amount of volume on such kinds of actions, then the community would be toxic at that point. But generally, I look for the average. Like, what's the dominant experience of the community? What's my dominant experience? Because this is the other thing with nuanced thinking. We have to remember that the positive matters, and we shouldn't have to magnify the negative to obscure the positive, especially if we're dealing with a sea of people rather than just one person. Now, if I'm dealing with one person and there's just something that went wrong one day, I'm shaking the screen, sorry about that, big whoop, we can manage that. The repair is what's going to tell me whether or not it's reasonable to keep going. It's not that the mistake happened or that the hurt happened, it's that the repair, their attempt to understand me, my attempt to understand them, the attempt at repair matters there. So if I'm screwing up, I step on someone's toes, which I do frequently, unfortunately. I'm learning more about them and what they need and how they work and how that aligns with me. I'm learning the nuance of relating, because it's a bumpy road. It's a natural part of our reality. So as we exit the codependent dynamic, we have to build some capacity towards that nuance and slow down our thinking, slow down our responses, so we can make sure we're understanding the context that we're in our history, understanding their context and their history, leaning into understanding what might be possible here, and we can discuss the thing and see what we discern through it. This is a skill. It is a practice. It is not comfortable at all. That's one of the things with healing, moving beyond codependency, is there's a lot of discomfort, because we're learning how to relate in really honest ways. And we're learning how to step out of black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking. We're also wrestling with our attachment imprint. Some of us have attachment imprints that say, run. Run from this. Somebody said something to me that hurt me. Run. Yeah, I've done that. Some of us have anxious attachments that say, keep them, make them feel better, even though they hurt me. We got to be mindful of that and understand what we're looking for there. What do we need there? And is this motivating a behavior that's appropriate for the situation, or that we want to live with the consequence of? Because I'm an avoidant. Technically what's called dismissive avoidant, which means I kind of just shut down and walk away. Not a constructive way to build and maintain relationships. Certainly not a constructive way to maintain community in my world. And it's done a lot of harm. It's not been a really constructive tool. The one place it did me well was in managing my relationship with my abusers. Beyond that, it's actually been very counterproductive and destructive to my well-being and to relationships I care about. So I've had to do the opposite. I have to lean into connection, lean into understanding, lean into the nuance of it, so that I can cultivate what matters to me, so that I can understand and respect them and acknowledge the humanity that's in me and in them. Because the other thing with black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking, it's a state of perfectionism. It's got to be perfect or I'm out. I got to be perfect or I'm worthless. This is not realistic. We don't live in a world that will ever function that way. It can't. It's not supposed to. It doesn't need to. What needs to happen is we lean into the understanding of difference, the understanding of misunderstanding. We lean into boundary and say, wow, this kind of behavior is intolerable to me, so I'm going to cut it off. These are personal choices. These are things that you'll navigate and decide in your world what matters to you. Those will probably change over time. Mine certainly have, as I've gained more healing, more capacity, more understanding. And some things haven't changed. I'm quite intolerant to being abused. Sorry, not going to happen. So when we talk about nuance, we talk about all or nothing thinking. We need to lean into the middle and discover what else is possible here. By understanding context, by gaining more information to build that nuance, and then being able to discern what's best for us in that, based on our own values, based on our body awareness, based on what consequence we want to live with. So that's today's random bits. Tomorrow we'll have more random bits as we go through the last of the holiday season. Next week, we'll be starting some work on innocence, actually, because the Reclaiming Innocence course will be available. You'll be able to sign up for that. That'll be starting January 18th. And we'll be doing some specific trainings on innocence and the role that it plays in our healing and in the reclaiming of ourselves from abuse, from neglect, from codependency, and in discovering more about our own worth. Okay? You're welcome, Nicole. You're very welcome. Okay. Guys, I appreciate you. Thank you for being who you are. Remember that you're worth knowing, loving, and keeping. And I will see you later. Bye-bye.